Well, thank you for joining us. This is kind of an informal discussion on redeeming the straw man. My name is Kent Hovind. With me is John D'Arcy from South Florida. Thank you, John. Nice of you to drive all the way up to visit us here in Pensacola. America's in trouble. We have a lot of people confused about what's going on. This will be just kind of an informal discussion about it ties on a variety of topics, but where are our rights? Our founding fathers said, "Behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, rights that you just can't put a lien against." And what we want to try to do is just explain where we lost it and how to get it back. Just try to keep it simple so folks like me can understand it. Basically, God created the universe. We've got a little chart here behind me that kind of explains God created people. This would be Kent Hovind, John D'Arcy, John Doe, etc., etc. We, the people, got together 200 years ago and created a state government. All of those states got together and created a federal government. And the federal government is supposed to be the servant to the state government. States are supposed to be supreme, states' rights, which goes into a long story of the wrong side winning the Civil War, right?
Exactly. What was the Civil War?
What was the Civil War? It's Abe Lincoln's war. It wasn't the Civil War.
That's right. It wasn't slavery.
It wasn't slavery, no. And then the federal government created a corporate federal government. Notice it's all capital letters. The corporate federal government created a corporate state government. And one of these two, somewhere in here, created persons with all capital letters. This would be Kent Hovind with all capital letters. This is not me. Which leaves us with an interesting situation. Since whatever God creates, He controls, and we're supposed to be subservient to God, whatever we create, we control, and the states, the federal and state government are supposed to be subservient to we the people. They're supposed to be our servants. But whatever the government creates, it controls. So the government has created persons, actually a corporate soul, for every individual being in the United States. There's a corporate Kent Hovind and a corporate John D'Arcy. And they can pass all sorts of rules and regulations for their corporation, which they own and control and regulate, etc. Now, they're using my name, though. They created a corporation and chose my name to go on there and chose your name to go on one and everybody else's name to go on one. So they've kind of abused their privilege and stepped out of their delegated authority and used my name. So that leaves me with four choices to take. Number one, I can do what they say, which is what most Americans do. The state government can tell their person, you must wear a seatbelt when you drive your car. They can tell this person, you must file an income tax form. You must get a Social Security number. You must get a driver's license. You must get a birth certificate, etc., etc. And they have the right to tell that to this person. So I can either say, okay, I'll do what you say. I can bring myself from here all the way down and submit myself under these corporations. Or I can try to cut the string between this we the people and the artificial we the people. I can try to cut that string. And some people do that with varying degrees of success. Number three, I can look for loopholes in the laws and say, well, wait a minute, this law doesn't require that I do this. And some people, with varying degrees of success, look for loopholes and say, wait a minute, the state does not require persons to file a tax form unless they are a drug dealer from the Virgin Islands or live in Washington, D.C., or use a zip code, and all sorts of different arguments have been used, and some not too successful. Choice number four is claim this guy. Say, hey, you're using my name. That's mine. I want it. That's what I want John to explain to us today. How do we redeem that straw man? And what does that mean, redeeming that straw man and moving him or claiming him as your own? John, tell us about that.
Well, redemption is basically very biblically grounded.
Oh, yes, right.
And it is the soul of the Christian's belief that we ultimately, our souls are redeemed through Jesus Christ. And all we have to do is accept His finished work on the cross, and we are eternally redeemed. And Christ then protects and holds our soul for all eternity. So it's very biblically based, and it's funny that no matter how corrupt things seem to be getting, government seems to follow God's law. Mm-hmm. You ever wonder why every 7 years you can file a bankruptcy and not 12? or
Yeah,
every 3.
why 7? Just, sure. Yeah.
You know, the Bible talks about things like that in year of Jubilee and things like that. And there's another principle about giving your fellow man notice and grace. And a lot of people might say, well, why? How can you call that just for a God to take a heathen in Africa who never saw the Bible and expect him to have knowledge of Jesus Christ? And Isaiah talks about how God has given everyone notice. Then shall it be for a man to burn, for he will take thereof and warm himself. Yea, he kindleth it and breaketh bread. Yea, he maketh a god and worshipeth it. He maketh it a graven image and falleth down thereto. So we see one type of man that looks at God's nature and he does not marvel at it, but he has rejected God's general revelation as opposed to object it, in stark contradiction with what David does.
Yeah, David looked at himself and said, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, in the book of Psalms, And as a biology teacher, I would agree, all you got to do is study anything about human anatomy or biology, and you'll say, man, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. One cell more complex than a space shuttle.
Amen.
It's unbelievable. The best thing man can build is, God builds trillions and trillions of them,
Yeah. So we got the two type of people there, and so man is not without excuse that God has testified to man, and if man accepts God's general revelation, then God is faithful and he will send him specific revelation, meaning the Bible and knowledge of Jesus Christ. So the heathen that's out in the middle of the jungles in Africa who does not have a Bible, he will be held accountable to the revelation and knowledge he has, meaning nature. So that is a very basic principle of law that we have to give notice and grace. And just as God gives us notice and grace, in law, would anybody be surprised to find out that there are very elements of notice and grace that are given? And that is a very, what I consider to be a biblical principle that is very prominent in this whole concept of redeeming the straw man. The other...
Wait a minute, so you're saying it's in God's economy or God's plan or God's character, give notice of what you expect.
That's right.
And what you want.
That's right.
And then the grace is a time period in which to accomplish this?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. And the other concept that I see here is we've got a mirror, okay? And we have God, and he's perfect, he's holy, he's just. And the flip side to that would be Satan. And he is the exact opposite of what is holy and what is just. Right? He's evil. And God, only God can create real, tangible things. Paper,
sure,
and
matter
wood,
of time,
and,
right?
And so Satan cannot. So all he is left doing is counterfeiting, and he's a great counterfeiter. And that is the other principle that we find out here in the straw man, is that whatever God created, Satan's got his counterfeit too. And man turns around and man created real de jure government. The government turned around and created a fiction. And I like to think of the state, in fact, when we start talking about government, when I mention the word state, I think of the state that is created in the womb, mankind.
Okay.
That is real government. And our founding fathers said, there is where the basis of all government, it's held within mankind.
Right.
The executive, legislative, and judicial.
Even in Genesis chapter 10, after the flood, God told Noah, he established government. He said, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed.
That's a great point.
Right.
And we have our dispensational theology, and we have